I'll be honest with you. I'm ashamed to be here today. See, I'm all about motivation, inspiring people to do better, and giving people a reason to help each other. I don't sell books, I sell hope. There shouldn't be a need for my kind of talk, right? Unfortunately, there is a need. We live in a society that sometimes has trouble empathizing with one another. And the only way to fix that is to share our experiences. As such, I offer you only one piece of advice. You should all be kind to each other. Everything else I'm about to say is either chock full of wisdom or the meandering musings of one person's thoughts and experiences. I'll leave that for you to decide. Let's go back to 1989, the time of Knight Rider, big hair, collectible Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. I'm only 9 years old. Now, I've never walked, but I got a really, really cool manual wheelchair. It's got rainbows and Care Bears and dragon stickers. I was so cool. But who needs to be able to walk when you have that many stickers, right? Anyway, I lived with my mom and my grandma at the time. Things were pretty great. My nana also used the wheelchair, and as you can imagine, we did a lot of wheelchair races, and by that I mean I rolled around the house and declared victory while she watched her soap operas and largely tried to ignore me. But no, things were great. My mom was great. She cared for both of us, and we were a happy family. We didn't have a lot of money, but we always had enough for the important things in life. Hot dogs. That was what really mattered, and I feel like as long as you had that in their life, you were doing okay. Uh, you know, but like every story, things are good until they weren't. Span of a few weeks, things turned rough. My nana had a heart attack, and she passed away in 1989, and it was hard for my family. Not only that, but a few weeks later, I was then hospitalized. There was a horrible flu that year. It affected the elderly, the disabled, and the immunocompromised the most, but it was an extremely bad flu, one which I happened to be lucky enough to catch. Let me die. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking things a 9-year-old could ever say to his own mom. Doctors at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania had delivered horrifying, terrifying news to my mom. Your son can't breathe on his own. And if we don't put a tube down his throat and get him onto a ventilator in the next few hours, he's going to die. They told her that I would not be able to talk, eat, or drink anymore. The ventilator would change life for me as I knew it and as she knew it. They then told her that I likely wouldn't survive more than a couple of months, and what time I did have left be spent attached to a loud, obnoxious breathing machine. They told her it would be impossible for us to ever leave the hospital. Now, my mom was kind of unique when it came to medical care. A lot of parents tend to make decisions for their children, but my mom, well, she believed that everything the doctor said needed to be told to me. Her mantra was that it was my life, and she wasn't about to tell me how I was going to live it. My younger self couldn't have imagined a life like that. Using a wheelchair was bad enough. Being profoundly disabled and so different than the other children was bad enough. All I could think about was how everyone was going to mock me. Wouldn't have any friends, and I'd be a burden to everyone. At 9 years old, this was all I could think about. There'd be no one to talk to, no more wheelchair races, most importantly, no more hot dogs. They were just going to take everything fun in my life. And I was horrified. I pleaded with my mom and the doctors to just let me go. My mother, she's a stubborn woman. You kind of have to be when you have a disabled child, but particularly a disabled child that was much of a handful as I was. She could argue better than any lawyer I've ever met, with an uncanny ability to face anyone, any system, if it just saved me an ounce of pain. She talked for hours with one of my closest doctors, one who had been with me at the muscular dystrophy clinic since I was a baby. They went over how difficult every aspect of my life would be, but my mom didn't want to let me go. Unfortunately, the other doctors in the hospital were after her constantly, telling her how bad it was going to be and that life would be impossible from that point forward. In a fury, that doctor, my neurologist, turns, slams his fist into the wall, breaking the drywall. No, he is not going to die. On December 15th, 1989, my mother's 38th birthday, she gave the doctors the go ahead to give me a tracheostomy. The plastic tube you see in my throat today. Against my wishes, she saved my life. And I will always be grateful to her for that. Sometimes you need someone to save you from yourself. There was an oversized clock on the wall of the intensive care unit after I was out of surgery. I was there for months. The beeps and the alarms of the ICU, they were incessant. They kept me up at night, and during the day it was impossible to get rest or sleep. I would just stare at this clock. The hands moved around and around for hours. To this day, I couldn't tell you why I remember that so vividly, but something made me focus on it. Something made me keep watching the time go by. Or maybe it was just something to focus on. Maybe it was shock. I honestly couldn't tell you, but I can tell you how many times I cried from pain versus how many times I shed tears from just feeling alone. Now, of course, I wasn't alone. My mom was there every step of the way, and I had visits from friends and family, and even some of the hospital staff who began coming by regularly from getting to know me and treatments along the way. Even with all that support, the only thing strong enough to overcome the immense pain was the overwhelming sense of loneliness, a deep hopelessness that I was alone and no one would ever want to be around me again because I was so different. One day, staring at that clock on the wall, a recreational therapist brought a huge white filing cabinet on wheels. I mean, this thing was massive. She rolled it up to the side of my bed, explaining that it was a computer with a video game system, but it was unlike anything I would have seen before. Now, back then, every single children's hospital in the planet had rooms with computers that you could go hang out with for a while and play some games just to get away from it. My hospital children's in Pittsburgh had this lovely fish tank wall full of little guppies that swam around and you could watch when you needed to relax for just a moment. So the parents would stare at the fish while their children played taekwondo on the computer. It was fun times. My family wasn't rich enough to afford our own computers, but I did get to play with them, and that was only at the hospital. One of the small, bright positives of being in such a place. I would go on to learn that those kind of computers were one thing, but this white filing cabinet, well, it wasn't your typical computer. It wasn't even a regular video game system. No, this was very, very different. It was a special computer, a magical one. And they would bring it to my room and they'd leave it with me for a set amount of hours if I would just agree that I would use it. Its purpose was to connect to all of the other children's hospitals in its network around the world. You can make friends here, she told me. Why don't you give it a try? What a fascinating concept. I, I don't know what to think or what to expect. I, I miss being around others, but in this new situation, I no, I'm scared, but I'm intrigued. I log on to the game for the first time, and in a word, it was amazing. You could wander around a majestic island with beautiful sand, a vibrant ocean, gorgeous waterfalls, unicorns, and a lot of bright, warm virtual sunshine. At first, I didn't see a lot that I could do there other than hang out and enjoy the scenery. Until one day, I noticed something a little different. There was a pink star hanging out underneath the biggest waterfall. See, we all had avatars of shapes and colors. Very basic for today's standards, but back then, the way that you identified who was a person was stars. I don't remember how our first words to each other went, but I do remember seeing the text pop up on top of the screen. We talked for hours. We shared what we were going through, how many doctors were mean to us, how the nurses were being nice to us, because nurses are always nicer, and how much we missed our pets. She quickly became my refuge, my safe harbor. In a hurricane of despair, I returned to our place of solitude underneath that waterfall by the most enormous palm tree on the island as often as they would let me. They say that in the end, you rarely remember the words someone says to you. You only remember the feelings that they gave you. And I think for me, this was never more true. Although I remember snippets of seeing sentences on the screen, I don't remember the conversations we had or what we talked about. Simply that meeting that pink star in that virtual world was making me feel good again. Every day the doctors would come and tell me how different my life would be, how depressing, how no one in the world would understand me again. And I would have to get used to explaining everything to everyone all the time, all of my medical equipment. It would all need explanations because no one would possibly understand my world. They even said that they were going to do a school assembly just so that kids wouldn't be shocked when I came rolling back into school. Resuming my usual life was impossible, they said. In the end, a tiny human on the other side of a virtual paradise did for me something that no other human in the real world was doing. She made me believe that there was hope. Sometimes, what you need the most is someone to make you believe tomorrow. The intermediate intensive care unit, a slight step down from the intensive care unit designated for people who are still battling serious conditions, but over the long term, is set up exactly like you would see in an emergency room. Hospital beds are lined up in a horseshoe shape all around this giant room with a nurse's station in the middle. When you live in one of these places for an extended period of time, they tend to give you one particular stall, and that's your place. A little area where you can decorate the curtains, put things on the wall, and really just call it your own. In my case, I used it to keep a balloon farm and lovely, lovely balloons. Gosh, those nurses hated those balloons. It was a good place to have your own, but it was connected to the others. Just a thin veil of curtain between the two. There was a young boy. At the time, I was now 10, and there was a boy across from me diagonally. I could see him in his bed and his family around all the time, and my mom hanging out with me, and basically both of our families just waiting for time to tick by for things to get better, for treatments to take hold and things to be okay so that you could go home. A lot of times, the goal of an IICU is to let you go home. Well, this young kid's name, I couldn't tell you because I never learned it. I only knew that his name was Turtle. Turtle was my age, probably 10 or so, with a mom and a dad, and he also decorated his room with Ninja Turtle stickers and colored things on the walls. He would use crayons to draw all kinds of animals and place them all over the place. He was a cool little kid. And at the time, I just really wanted a friend. I had my pink star, but I didn't have anybody in the real world, and that was what I really wanted. So in an effort to make friends, I would have my nurses turn a television set that was hooked to the ceiling towards him. My mom had bought me the wonderful classic movie Beetlejuice for Christmas that year, and in order to make friends, I would have the nurses turn the television so that he could see it, and I'd let him watch my movie because that was how you made friends. Turtle had a condition with his heart, and it was difficult to gauge what was happening. They obviously didn't tell a 10-year-old at the time what was going on, and I had no earthly concept of what congestive heart failure was. I just knew that my friend Turtle sometimes hurt when he tried to breathe. We would talk about the little games that they had, the plastic parts, the little tiny circles and X's you could put in a little timer thingy, and you could make it pop up and then kind of shove the pieces all over the place, and the nurses would have to pick them up. And oh my gosh, how much fun we had making those nurses pick up those little parts. Why they didn't take that game away from us, I'll never know. But we shared that small connection, that small moment. And every day I would get up into my wheelchair because they would make me. And he was too weak to get up. So I would roll over, talk for a couple minutes, roll around the unit, have fun, come back, repeat. One day, when I went to go over to him, they wouldn't let me. For some reason, the curtain was closed and I couldn't get to my friend. And I didn't understand why. Later on that night, they helped me get back into bed, and I watched my cartoon movies and was hanging out when alarms blared and people went running to this area where my friend was. And to this day, I don't know what happened. I can only tell you that alarms blared and people ran and carts rolled across the floor, clacking as they went. And then I saw the family walk out with their heads down, and I saw how sad they were, and the lights got turned off in that stall. And it was hard because I didn't understand what happened. Later, I would learn that my friend Turtle had a fatal heart attack. His heart failure caught up with him, and there was nothing that they could do. Turtle passed on, having lived as much of a fun life as he could in a hospital with those same rec therapists that I had had helping me have fun. Before the family left, they came over and they gave one of the crayon colored Ninja Turtles to my mom, and they thanked her. And at the time, I didn't understand why. But I would later come to find out in my teenage years that the family was grateful to my mom for letting their child, their turtle, have a friend. Me. That rolling over there, that joking around about torturing nurses with little plastic parts on the floor was the connection point that he had in the real world. It was the moment for him that made him smile, and he was happy for those moments. Sometimes making a connection for just a moment is all that matters. Fast forward years and years later, I joined a wonderful organization called Able Gamers that helps people with disabilities be able to play video games to keep those connections rolling. We were at a convention, physical convention like a PAX, but for people with disabilities. And at this convention, we had a booth set up with our friends over at Forza. It's a racing game that you zoom around a track and beat your friends at their fastest times. But it wasn't just an ordinary setup, it was set up with assistive technology. And at this particular booth, I was reminded about all of those times that had gone by where we used those kinds of technologies to keep people connected together. Now, being an adult, now in my 20s, my job was to be the older kid, was to be the one to find those people that needed that connection. So we set up all of our assistive technology and we had it on the game, and it was one of the coolest things I had ever seen because it was not a standard controller. It was one that you could use with your mouth or your elbows or your knees or your feet. It was different and cool. One day, a family came up outside of our little booth area. It was a mom and a dad, a brother and a sister, and another younger brother, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. He's reclined backwards, 45-degree angle in a manual wheelchair with a tray table made of glass. On top of it sits a heart monitor, and behind the chair is an oxygen tank. His head is cocked off to the side. He's got a drool bib on, but he's staring at the Forza game. He is intensely staring at these cars going around the track as the demo plays, waiting for people to come to the booth. I see this. I'm there with the founder of my charity, Mark, and we're noticing that they're there, but we're also helping other people at the time. So it's not our primary focus. But they're not leaving. Hours are rolling by, and they're still wandering back and forth around that area. And me, being the stubborn person that you may have gathered from my other stories, I roll up to them and I say, "Hey, come check this out. You obviously want to check it out." The mom and dad, no, 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 no. It's not for us. It's just kids really they like watching it, so we're just watching. No, 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 no. Come on, just come on, come check it out. Just give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? Well, I badger them because that's what I do. Until they relent and they come over to the booth, and the brother and sister are cool race cars, woo, and the younger brother stares at the monitor, and the mom and the dad are apologizing. Hey, thanks for trying. Wasn't I don't think there's a lot we can do here, but Mark and I are like, no, just hang on a second. And so we're talking to the family. We're asking questions, asking about condition, prognosis, diagnosis, etc., etc. And what we're really doing is assessing what this kid can do. We notice that his foot has a little bit of a twitch in it, but it doesn't seem to be random. It seems to be when the cars are on the track. Cool. So we confer and we go, all right, I know what to do. So we take a foot pedal that looks exactly like the pedal on your car for your gas, and we plug it into a controller on the Forza machine. Mark holds it up underneath the kid's foot, and the kid presses down on the pedal, and the car comes roaring to life, drives across the screen, and slams directly into the wall. And that kid lit up like a Christmas tree. The brightest star I've ever seen in my entire life. And at that moment, we realized that they were included. They were in the game for the very first time. And that would be an amazing story in and of itself, an Oprah worthy story if I would. But it doesn't end there. The next day, the father comes up behind me and I feel this squeeze on my shoulder and then I turn around and now keep in mind I'm in a power wheelchair. I'm 5'2.5", thank you very much, off the ground. But this dude is a Marine. I am looking up at him. He is like built like the rock. He is tall, eclipses the sun. And I look up and I see there's tears in his eyes. And I go, Mr. So and so, you okay? What's wrong? Steve, I just had to come back and I had to tell you thank you. Because that's not necessary. We're just here to help. I appreciate that, but no, it's fine. It's what we do. I appreciate that. And he squeezes my arm a little tighter, and he says, "No, Steve, you don't understand. My son is nonverbal. He can't communicate with the outside world. He has no way of telling me what he wants, what he's interested in. But every Saturday morning, we watch cartoons together, and he lays his head in my lap, and we cuddle and watch TV, and we watch cartoons. And every time a video game commercial comes on, he wiggles and he bubbles and he giggles. And I know he wants to be able to play video games, but he can't. And y'all gave that to him. You gave that to him. You gave that to me. I can't even express what happened to me after that. I melted into some sort of puddle of human. I'm just falling over the side of my chair. It's okay. Thank you so much. And in that moment, I realized that what we do is we give people back their hopes and their dreams. What we do is we enable them to chase after the things that they thought they could no longer reach. We were enabling connection, not a video game. It was never about the video game. It's always about the connection. It's always about the experience. Sometimes a dream that seems impossible can be made possible by the right person, right time. It's just impossible. You know how many times as a person with a terminal disease and as disabled as I am that I have been told the words "it's impossible"? You're never going to live past 10. It's impossible. You won't live long enough to see the end of college. It's impossible. You'll never find love. It's impossible. You will never make a difference in this world. It is impossible. I am here today to tell you the very little in this life is impossible. I possible. People tell me that I am strong, resilient, inspirational, but I'm here to tell you that I am not. I am here. I didn't quit because my options were to do those things or die. I chose not death. I didn't choose this life, but I'm going to make every second of it count. You can too. Go out there, help others. Be there for someone when they need saved from themselves. Find a way to make people believe in tomorrow. Give them hope. Hardly anything is impossible. Connect with others and share experiences. In those moments, when the darkest of doubts try to creep into your mind, say to yourself, I can make a difference. I am still here because I can make a difference in someone else's life. I am possible. So are you. Thank you.